Hi everyone, my name is Karis and welcome back to my corner of the internet where I talk about books and other things that I enjoy. And in today's video I'm going to be doing the RuPaul's Drag Race UK Season 2 book tag. So I was actually going to sit down today and film Aoife from Pretty Purple Polka Dots' Derry Girls book tag. However, she then tagged me in Twitter on this tag and I thought I have to do this one first because the finale of Drag Race is like the day after this is going to be going live. This one was created by the blogger Royal Bookshelf and I will leave a link to the original tag and also Aoife in the description, and thank you so much for tagging me, Aoife. So I thought I would wear my fanciest outfit for the occasion because in 2021 where else am I gonna have chance to wear so many sequins? Not gonna lie, it's not really weather appropriate, it's still quite cold, and also it is falling apart a bit because I wore it to Mighty Hoopla a couple of years ago, which is like an all-day festival sort of thing in London, and yeah, some of the sequins have fallen off, so it's a bit of a basic look, but it will do. Basically for this tag there's a question for each one of the queens from the season. I would say if you haven't watched the season and you don't want to know any form of spoilers, then don't watch because I'm going to talk about some stuff that's happened in the show. Also, please let me know in the comments who you're rooting for to win. I'm definitely 100% behind Bimini Bombulash. I just love them so much. I really hope they do win, but I think that Lawrence might win, which is fine. I like everyone who's left. I like all of the queens actually. I've liked all of them this season. So the first prompt is for Astina Mandela and it's to talk about a book set in London. Now, we're off to a really good start. I don't know if I'm just being really stupid, but I could not think of anything off the top of my head, at least not anything that I've read recently. So I've decided to talk about a book that I'm anticipating reading, and that is a book called Night Shift by Kira Ladner. Basically, as the title would suggest, this is centered around night shifts in big offices in London, and it's a sort of psychological thriller, I believe, following a woman who gives up her day job and spending time with her boyfriend and her other friends in order to work night shifts to be alongside this other woman. And I think there's going to be a friendship that begins to form there that quickly develops into something more and possibly an almost obsession, and I think it's just going to be so interesting. That use of setting in particular is something that I haven't seen or read from before, so I'm just really intrigued to see how this plays out. And I'm also really interested in the whole aspect of this book that is about young people, young women in particular, going to London, finding themselves. I live quite near to London. I moved there straight after uni and I'm quite often in the city, so naturally that whole sort of premise intrigues me. The next prompt is a horror, and for this one it is to talk about a redemptive character, because obviously a horror said various things at points in the season that weren't the nicest, especially towards Tia Coffee, but I think in the end, in like the last few episodes that she was in particular, she sort of redeemed herself, and her elimination was obviously very controversial. I've seen a lot of things about it. I thought the top 4 were going to be like the United King Dolls group, but I don't want to like throw shade on anyone because all the queens that are left are very talented. But I don't think there's been anything that I've read recently where there's been a character who's massively redeemed themselves. If I think back a very long time, a character that I remember hating and then coming around to really liking was a girl called, I think she was called Celeste, from the Selection series by Kira Cass, but it's been years since I read that. So I did think of an example where it's sort of a redemption story, but not in the eyes of the reader because you're always on the character's side, but in the eyes of other people, if that makes sense. So basically, in the book The Mercies by Kieran Millward Hargrave, there's this woman in it called Ursa. Ursa is basically like sold off by her father to get married to this man who goes to this small community where all the men have died. Her husband is basically sent to this community of women to oversee it really, and there's a lot of witch trial stuff going on in the background here. Obviously, because she is associated with this man, a lot of the characters initially don't trust Ursa. They see her as the enemy, but then as the story progresses, things start to change. She develops relationships with the other women and one woman in particular. So I guess it's like a redemption in the eyes of the other characters, not in the reader's eyes because you obviously know like her horrible backstory. The next prompt is for Bimini Bombulash and it's to talk about a book that started off rocky. This is obviously because Bimini had to lip sync in the first episode, but now she's absolutely slayed the competition and has 4 badges going into the final. Now I just want to say, decisions making Bimini lip sync in the first episode. Like, yes, I guess their hometown look was a bit messy, but the Princess Julia, when Bimini came out on the runway in that outfit, I gasped. I thought it was the best one, like one of the best ones at least. from that episode. And then when they were like, you're in the lip sync, I was like, really? The book that I chose for this prompt was The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I actually did enjoy this book pretty much all of the way through, but it was quite slow to begin with, and I didn't think that I was really going to enjoy it. I don't read fantasy very much anyway, so I think going into it I sort of went in with that mindset thinking, oh, this might not be my sort of thing. And then at the beginning the pacing was a bit like, am I going to like this? But I think once I got past like even like the first 50 pages or so, I really got into this story and into this world, and I think listening to the audiobook for this one really helped, because I think I wouldn't have powered through it if I had just read it physically. The prompt for Cherry Valentine is to talk about a book with a red cover. Again, I just want to interject here and say Cherry Valentine robbed. Her look in that episode that she went out in, not my favourite, but I had really like picked her out as one of the ones that I thought was going to go really far. I think we didn't see enough of her. I know it was really difficult because everyone in this season, I think whoever would have gone at the earlier stages, I would have been like, oh, I'd really like to have seen more of them. But I just really liked Cherry, and I think it was a real shame that she went out so early. For a book with a red cover, I've talked about this one before for a similar prompt, but I'm gonna go once again with Hamlet by Maggie O'Farrell, just because it's like the most read book that I own, and it's so pretty with this beautiful gold foiling. This is the Waterstones exclusive edition, and this is on my TBR for March, so I should be reading it within the next couple of months, which I'm very excited about. The prompt for Ellie Diamond is to talk about a book published in 2021. Apparently this prompt is because Ellie was 21 when she was on the show, so she was the youngest one there. To think that she was only 21 when it was filmed is just mind-blowing to me. Like, I'm 25 next month, so I'm like 3, nearly 4 years older than her, and I could never. For this one I have chosen People Like Her by Ellery Lord. This came out earlier this year, and it is about a mummy blogger. It's a thriller. That's all I really know about it, but that whole concept sounds really interesting. I don't really watch many mommy vloggers or follow any mommy bloggers, but I used to watch like a few YouTube families. Again, I don't really watch them anymore, but the whole concept of raising your kids online is something that I always find very intriguing, and I would just like to learn more about, I guess. So I'm really interested to see how it's portrayed in this and how the thriller aspect of it comes into play as well. This one was really kindly sent to me by my friend Kayla because she'd read it and was wanting to get rid of it, so she sent it on to me, and it's not on my March TBR, but I think April, May sort of time, I'm going to put it on there. For Ginny Lemon, the prompt is a book with a shocking plot twist. And this is obviously because of Ginny Lemon's shock exit from the season. For this one, I went for the Good Girls Guide to Murder series in general by Holly Jackson. For me personally, I'm trying to think if I saw the ending of the first one come in. I did actually work out quite a lot of what was going to happen in this one, but I know a lot of people haven't and have been really shocked by the ending to this, so that's why I wanted to talk about it. And I just think in general that these are such good murder mysteries and really gets your brain thinking and gets you playing detective along with the character, which is what I really want from this sort of book. The prompt for Joe Black is a misunderstood character. I'm here to defend Amy from Little Women. I really like Amy. She's probably my favourite of the siblings, and I think that she gets a lot of hate, and I think that it's unnecessary. At the beginning of this book, yeah, she does some bad things. She's not the nicest, but she was so young, and I think this is the problem in the film. I love the film, but I think Florence Pugh obviously looks so much older, but Amy in this is like 12, 13. You tell me that you didn't do stupid things when you were 12 or 13. The relationship that happens at the end, like, I know a lot of people have feelings about that, but I'm not mad at it. The prompt for Lawrence Chaney is a book that makes you laugh. I went for the most recent thing that made me laugh, and that was Erin's Diary by Lisa Mcgee. This is a companion book to the TV show Derry Girls, which sort of relates because, as I said, I'm going to be doing Aoife's Derry Girls tag very soon. I just really enjoyed this. There was definitely some moments that made me have a laugh to myself, and the TV show in general is just brilliant. Not a lot of things do make me laugh out loud. Maybe there's something wrong with me in that sense, but Derry Girls definitely does. The prompt for Sister Sister was to talk about a book about siblings, taking Sister Sister's name very literally. And for this one, I wanted to talk about Little and Lion by Brandy Colbert. Little and Lion are the sort of pet names that two siblings, Suzette and Lionel, give to each other. Lionel is obviously Lion and Suzette is Little. And so much of the core of this book is their relationship, because it follows Suzette coming home from boarding school, and you find out that she's basically been sent there because Lionel has recently been diagnosed with bipolar disorder as a way of her family sort of coping with his diagnosis, she ends up going to school away from home, and she's back for the summer, seeing her brother for the first time in a very long time. It just follows their story from there. It follows Lionel's journey with his diagnosis, Suzette's journey with being back, seeing him again, but also with her sexuality. So many things. I just love this book so much, and the sibling relationship is really at the core of this one. The prompt for Tace is a resilient character, which is because Tace has been the lip sync assassin of the season. She's been in the bottom quite a few times, but she's always come back strong. So the character that I've chosen for this is Zelika, who is the main character in a book that I recently read called The Emperor's Babe by Bernadine Evaristo. I'll talk about this one more in my March wrap up because I feel like I need to put my thoughts together a bit more, but basically this is set in Roman London, and it follows the story of Zelika, who's a teenage bride. Her parents basically give her away to this powerful man, and she's like 11 at the time. It really follows her story from there, and then one day she meets the emperor, like the most powerful man around, and they begin a separate relationship. There's just so much that I could say about this book, but I did find her story to be one of resilience. I think because this book was told in verse as well, it just really came across like her character and how her personality shone through, and there was just something powerful and like endearing about this character, that even though she'd been through so much, she had this real sense of presence and self. The next prompt is Tia Coffee, a character you rooted for, and for this I'm going to go with Hassan from We Are All Birds of Uganda by Hafsa Zayan. Hassan is the main character in this book, and you see him dealing with sort of coming to terms with himself, his identity, really figuring out where he wants to be in the world. He has quite a well-paid job in London as a lawyer, and then he ends up being called back to Leicester because something's happened to one of his best friends, and ultimately you follow his story to Uganda, where he learns about his family's history, because his family were Ugandan Asians who were expelled from the country under Idi Amin. Although I couldn't relate on a lot of levels with like the cultural background that he was from, I can relate with the feeling of being a bit lost and thinking that everything is perfect, and on the outside everything does look perfect, but really it's not, and just wanting to find your place in the world, even if that's sort of like a simpler life than what you already have, or a less successful life than what you already have in the eyes of other people. I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to, and I just really rooted for him to figure out where he was going and just find happiness throughout this book. And the final prompt is Veronica Green, and this is to talk about a book that disappointed you. The tag makes it very clear that this is not because Veronica was disappointed, but more because of what happened with her. Veronica actually tested positive for COVID, so she couldn't come back and finish off the season, and I know that was obviously hugely disappointing to her. I think it was really disappointing to the audience as well. She was performing really well before that, but hopefully she'll be back in season 3. For me, a recent book that disappointed me was The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I talked about this quite a lot at the end of last year because that's around the time that I read it, but I just didn't enjoy it, to be honest. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, no, I just didn't like it. I really didn't like any of the characters, and for me, there has to be a little bit of me enjoying that aspect of it. Like, I know they were meant to be unlikable characters, but when I'm not rooting for anyone, I then can't bring myself to care about who was murdered or who was found guilty, whose life was going to be ruined. Also, I did guess what was going to happen in this, and I don't know if that just makes me a genius, because I know a lot of people say that this is a massive plot twist. There were just a few things that were said quite early on when certain characters met each other that I was like, I bet this relates to that, and then in the end, lo and behold, it did. So those were all of the queens, all of the questions. I really enjoyed doing this tag. It was just a really quick, fun one to film, and I'm so excited for the finale tomorrow. If you want to do this tag, I tag you to do it. I don't have anyone in particular in mind because I don't really know anyone other than Aoife who watches Drag Race UK. And thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you're all keeping safe and staying well, and I will see you again next time. Bye!